I am sitting in a courtroom right now, my fingers wrapped tight around a worn brown folder. 10 years ago, I was just a 24-year-old guy fresh out of college trying to build something for myself. Then one freezing November morning, my doorbell rang at 5 a.m. and changed everything. There was a car seat on my doorstep with a newborn baby inside and a crumpled note from my sister. Before I continue, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If you believe in justice, hit that like button and subscribe, because what happened in that courtroom left everyone speechless. My family lived in a quiet suburb outside Portland, Oregon. Dad worked as a manager at an insurance company while Mom did part-time nursing shifts at the local hospital. From the outside, we looked like any ordinary middle-class American family. But inside our home, there was always an invisible line drawn between my older sister Meredith and me. Meredith was 3 years older, beautiful in that effortless way that made people stop and stare. She had this magnetic personality that drew everyone toward her at family gatherings. Our parents adored her. Every achievement she made, no matter how small, earned praise and celebration. When she got a B- in chemistry, they blamed the teacher. When I brought home straight A's, they barely looked up from their dinner plates. I learned early on that I was the invisible child. The quiet son who studied hard, worked part-time jobs since I was 16, and never asked for anything. While Meredith got a brand new car for her 18th birthday, I saved up for 2 years to buy a used Honda with 150,000 miles on it. I did not complain. I just accepted that this was how things were. Meredith dropped out of college during her sophomore year to chase a modeling career. Our parents supported her completely, sending her money every month to cover rent in Los Angeles. Meanwhile, I juggled 3 jobs to pay my own tuition at Portland State University. Nobody offered to help me. Nobody even asked if I needed anything. Over the years, Meredith drifted further away. She would disappear for months at a time, then suddenly show up asking for money. I heard rumors from a cousin that she had gotten involved with drugs, but when I mentioned it to our parents, they shut me down immediately. Mom said I was jealous of my sister. Dad told me to mind my own business. I graduated with a degree in accounting and landed my first real job at a small firm downtown. The salary was modest, barely enough to cover rent on a tiny studio apartment in a rough part of the city. But I was proud of myself. I had done it alone without any help from the people who were supposed to support me. Then came that November morning. The doorbell woke me from a dead sleep. 5 a.m. The sky outside was still pitch black and the temperature had dropped below freezing overnight. I stumbled to the door in my sweatpants, expecting maybe a lost delivery driver or a neighbor with an emergency. Nobody was there. I looked down and my heart stopped. A car seat sat on my doorstep, the kind you clip into a base in your car. Inside was a tiny baby wrapped in a thin pink blanket. Her face red and scrunched up, crying weakly like she had been doing it for hours and had almost given up. A piece of paper was tucked into the blanket beside her. I recognized Meredith's handwriting immediately. The letters were shaky, written in a hurry. The message was short and devastating. I cannot do this. Take care of her. Her name is Stella. Do not look for me. That was it. No explanation. No information about the baby's father. No birth certificate or medical records. Just a newborn child abandoned on my doorstep with nothing but a handful of diapers and 2 bottles of formula in a plastic bag beside the car seat. My hands were trembling as I brought Stella inside. I tried calling Meredith immediately, but an automated voice told me the number was no longer in service. I called again and again, refusing to believe what was happening. She had disconnected her phone completely. At 6 in the morning, I called my parents. Mom answered after several rings, her voice groggy with sleep. I explained everything in a rush, the words tumbling out faster than I could organize them. The car seat, the baby, the note, Meredith disappearing. I needed their help. I had no idea how to take care of a newborn. I could barely afford to feed myself. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Mom said something that made my blood run cold. She knew. Meredith had told them about the pregnancy weeks ago. She had told them she could not handle being a mother and that she was going to leave the baby with me. Our parents had known this was coming, and they had said nothing. They had not warned me. They had not offered to take the baby themselves. They had just waited for Meredith to dump her child on my doorstep, like I was some kind of designated garbage collector for family problems. I begged them to help me. I was 24 years old with no money, no experience with children, and a job I could barely survive on. How was I supposed to raise a newborn baby? Dad took the phone from Mom. His voice was cold and dismissive, the same tone he had always used when talking to me. "You always bragged about being independent," he said. "You always acted like you were better than everyone else because you did things on your own. Well, here is your chance to prove it." I tried to argue. I tried to explain that this was completely different from working my way through college. This was a human life. A helpless infant who needed constant care and attention. Dad cut me off. "She is your burden now. Deal with it." The line went dead. I stood in my tiny apartment holding a crying baby I had not asked for, completely alone. The first year was the hardest thing I have ever experienced in my life. Nothing could have prepared me for the relentless demands of caring for a newborn while working full-time and barely scraping by financially. My monthly salary was $1,800 after taxes. Rent for my studio apartment was $700. That left $1,100 for everything else, and I quickly learned that babies are expensive beyond anything I had imagined. Formula cost nearly $200 a month. Diapers were another $100. Then there were clothes she kept outgrowing every few weeks, doctor visits, medications when she got sick, and all the small essentials that added up faster than I could count. I started eating ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches for every meal so I could afford to buy Stella the formula she needed. I took on freelance bookkeeping work at night after she finally fell asleep, squinting at spreadsheets until 2 or 3 in the morning. Then Stella would wake up crying and I would stumble through another feeding before trying to catch a few hours of rest before work. Sleep deprivation became my constant companion. There were days I showed up at the office looking like a zombie, dark circles under my eyes, so deep they looked like bruises. My boss noticed and asked if everything was okay. I lied and said I was dealing with some health issues. I was terrified to tell the truth, afraid they would think I could not handle my job and let me go. Without that paycheck, Stella and I would have been homeless. The turning point came from an unexpected source. Dorothy lived in the apartment next door, a 70-year-old widow who had raised 4 children of her own. She heard Stella crying through the thin walls one night and knocked on my door to see if everything was all right. When I opened the door, holding a screaming baby with spit up all over my shirt and desperation in my eyes, Dorothy did not judge me. She simply asked if I needed help. That woman saved my life. She taught me how to recognize when Stella was hungry versus when she had gas or needed a diaper change. She showed me how to swaddle properly, how to burp a baby, how to soothe colic with gentle pressure on the belly. She came over on her days off and watched Stella so I could take a shower longer than 3 minutes or catch up on sleep. Dorothy became Stella's honorary grandmother, and I will be grateful to her until the day I die. After several months, I knew I needed to handle the legal situation. I found a community legal aid clinic that offered free consultations and sat down with a lawyer named Patricia, who specialized in family law. She listened to my story with wide eyes and shaking head. Patricia explained that I needed to establish legal guardianship to protect both myself and Stella. Without it, Meredith could theoretically show up at any time and take Stella back, or the state could step in and put her in foster care. She recommended documenting everything, every expense, every doctor visit, every milestone in Stella's development. I started keeping records that same day. I saved every receipt for formula and diapers. I photographed every new outfit I bought for Stella. I kept copies of her immunization records and pediatrician notes. I wrote down the dates of her first smile, her first laugh, the first time she rolled over on her own. Patricia helped me file for temporary guardianship through family court. Since Meredith could not be located and my parents refused to take responsibility, the judge granted my petition without much difficulty. But Patricia warned me that temporary was not permanent. If Meredith ever resurfaced, there could be a custody fight. So I kept documenting. Everything went into a brown folder that grew thicker with each passing month. The years started to blur together after a while, but they were filled with moments I would not trade for anything. Stella said her first word at 11 months old. It was Dada. I was standing at the stove making her some mashed bananas when she looked up at me from her high chair and said it clear as day. Dada. I dropped the spoon and cried like a baby myself. All those sleepless nights, all those struggles, all those moments when I wondered if I was ruining this little girl's life because I had no idea what I was doing. And here she was calling me her father. She took her first steps on her first birthday. I had set up a little party in the apartment, just me and Dorothy and some streamers I had bought at the dollar store. Stella was holding onto the coffee table when she suddenly let go and walked 4 whole steps toward me before tumbling into my arms. Dorothy captured the whole thing on her phone, and I still watch that video whenever I need a reminder of why I do what I do. My career progressed slowly but steadily. After 2 years at the firm, I was promoted to senior accountant. The raise was not huge, but it was enough to move us into a 2-bedroom apartment in a safer neighborhood. Stella finally had her own room with purple walls because she had decided purple was her favorite color. I studied for my CPA exam during her nap times, and after she went to bed at night. It took me 3 attempts to pass, but I finally did it when Stella was 4 years old. That certification opened doors to better positions with higher salaries. By the time Stella started kindergarten, I had been hired as a financial manager at a larger company with a real benefits package and a salary that finally allowed us to breathe. Throughout all those years, my parents and Meredith remained completely absent. Not a single phone call on Stella's birthdays, not a card at Christmas, not a text message asking how she was doing, or if she was healthy, or if she had started school. They treated her like she did not exist, like they had successfully dumped their burden and moved on with their lives. I stopped being angry after a while. Anger takes too much energy, and I needed every ounce of strength I had for Stella. But I never stopped documenting. Every year that passed without contact from them went into my records. Every birthday they missed. Every milestone they ignored. Stella asked about her mother for the first time when she was 6 years old. We were sitting at the kitchen table doing a craft project when she looked up at me with those big brown eyes and asked where her mommy was. My heart clenched, but I had prepared for this moment. I had read books about how to discuss adoption and abandonment with young children. I had practiced what I would say. I told her that her mommy had to go away when Stella was very little. I said that sometimes adults have problems they cannot fix, and it makes them unable to take care of the people they love. I told her that her mommy loved her even if she could not be here. Stella thought about this for a moment. Then she asked if I was her daddy. "Yes, sweetheart," I said. "I will always be your daddy." She smiled and went back to her craft project like we had just discussed what to have for dinner. But later that night, when I was tucking her into bed, she hugged me tight and whispered that she loved me and that I was the best daddy in the whole world. Those words meant more to me than any amount of money or success ever could. When Stella was 8 years old, I met Amanda. She worked in the marketing department at my company, and we started talking during a corporate retreat. Amanda was kind and patient, and had a warmth about her that reminded me of Dorothy. She knew about Stella from the beginning because I was not about to hide the most important part of my life from anyone I dated. Their first meeting was nerve-wracking for me. Stella had never really had a mother figure besides Dorothy, and I worried about how she would react to another woman in our lives. But Amanda handled everything perfectly. She did not try to be Stella's mom or force any kind of relationship. She just showed up consistently, played games with Stella, asked about her day, and let things develop naturally. Within a year, Stella was asking when Amanda was coming over and saving her best drawings to show her. Within 2 years, Amanda had moved in with us. When Stella was 9 years old, I proposed to Amanda with Stella helping me set up the surprise. We had strung fairy lights all over the backyard, and Stella held the ring box while I got down on one knee. Amanda said yes, and Stella tackled us both in a group hug that knocked us right into the grass. Life was finally good, better than good. We were a real family, unconventional maybe, but filled with more love than I had ever experienced growing up in my parents' house. Then the letter arrived. 2 weeks before Stella's 10th birthday, I came home from work to find an envelope from a law firm waiting in my mailbox. The return address was from a fancy practice downtown, the kind that charges $500 an hour and has marble floors in their lobby. I opened it with trembling hands. My parents and Meredith were suing me for custody of Stella. The legal complaint accused me of deliberately alienating Stella from her biological family. It claimed I had prevented them from having a relationship with her. It demanded that custody be transferred to Meredith, who was described as her loving biological mother, who had overcome personal challenges and was now ready to provide a stable home. I read the document 3 times before the words finally sank in. 10 years of silence. 10 years of nothing. And now they wanted to take my daughter away from me. Amanda found me sitting at the kitchen table an hour later, still staring at the papers. She read them herself, and her face went pale with fury. She said words I had never heard her use before, colorful descriptions of my family that I will not repeat here. Then she took my hand and said we were going to fight this. Stella was our daughter in every way that mattered, and no court in the world was going to take her from us. I hired the best family law attorney I could afford, a man named Marcus Webb, who had 30 years of experience and a reputation for winning impossible cases. He listened to my entire story from beginning to end, took notes in his leather-bound journal, and asked to see my documentation. When I brought out the brown folder now bulging with 10 years of records, his eyebrows shot up. He spent 2 hours going through everything, occasionally whistling under his breath or shaking his head in disbelief. "This is remarkable," he said. "Most people do not keep records like this. This is going to make all the difference." But I had not shown him everything yet. There was one more document in that folder, something I had obtained years ago and kept private. A police report from 10 years earlier showing that Meredith had been arrested for drug possession just 2 days after abandoning Stella on my doorstep. She had entered a rehabilitation facility, but left against medical advice after 3 months. Over the following decade, she had been arrested 4 more times for drug-related offenses. The most recent arrest was only 2 years ago. Marcus looked at the police reports and his face grew serious. He asked if my parents and Meredith knew I had this information. I told him they did not. They had no idea what I had been collecting all these years. He nodded slowly and said we had our defense. A few days after I received the legal papers, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. It was Meredith. Her voice sounded different than I remembered, softer and more practiced, like she had rehearsed what she was going to say. She told me she had changed. She had gotten clean. She had married a wonderful man named Richard, who was successful and wealthy, and wanted to give Stella the life she deserved. She said she wanted to be a mother now. She was ready to fix her mistakes. I asked her why she had not called in 10 years. Why she had not sent a single birthday card, or asked how Stella was doing, or made any effort whatsoever to be part of her life. She stumbled over her words, made excuses about needing to work on herself first, about not wanting to confuse Stella while she was getting her life together. I asked her about the drug arrests. The line went silent for a long moment before she hung up. 2 days later, my father called. First time in a decade. His voice had that same dismissive tone I remembered from childhood, like he was annoyed at having to speak to me at all. He told me Meredith had changed and deserved a second chance. He said Stella belonged with her real mother, not with an uncle who had no business raising someone else's child. He said they could provide Stella with opportunities I could never afford: a big house in a nice neighborhood, private schools, vacations to Europe. Then he mentioned that Richard Meredith's new husband had been very generous to them. Richard had helped them pay off their mortgage when Dad lost his job 2 years ago. Richard had been covering their monthly expenses ever since. And suddenly, I understood what this was really about. Richard wanted a child. Meredith wanted Richard's money. My parents wanted to keep the gravy train running. Stella was not a daughter to them. She was a bargaining chip. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in early November, almost exactly 10 years after Stella had appeared on my doorstep. I walked into that courtroom with Amanda by my side and the brown folder clutched against my chest. Marcus had prepared me for what to expect, but nothing could have prepared me for seeing my family on the other side of the room. Meredith was dressed in an expensive designer outfit, her hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She looked like a different person from the troubled young woman who had abandoned her newborn daughter. Richard sat behind her, a silver-haired man in his 50s with the kind of tan you get from golf courses and yacht clubs. My parents flanked them both, avoiding eye contact with me. Meredith's attorney spoke first, painting a picture of a reformed woman who had overcome addiction and built a new life. He described me as an overprotective uncle who had deliberately kept Stella isolated from her biological family out of spite and jealousy. My mother took the stand and testified that I had refused to let them see Stella. She claimed they had tried to reach out many times, but I had blocked their calls and returned their letters unopened. I watched her lie under oath and felt strangely calm. I had expected this. I was prepared for it. Then it was our turn. Marcus called me to the witness stand and handed me the brown folder. He asked me to describe its contents to the court. I started from the beginning. The car seat on my doorstep. The note from Meredith. The phone call where my father told me Stella was my burden. I had recorded that conversation on my phone, something I started doing after Patricia, the legal aid lawyer, suggested I document everything. The recording was played for the courtroom, my father's voice echoing off the walls as he said those words that had haunted me for a decade. My mother's face went white. My father's jaw clenched. I continued through the folder. Every receipt for formula and diapers, every pediatrician record, every photograph of Stella's milestones, every birthday she celebrated without a single card from her biological family, every Christmas that passed without acknowledgement. 10 years of evidence that I had been there while they had been nowhere. Then Marcus presented the final documents, the police reports, the arrest records, the pattern of drug offenses that continued until just 2 years before Meredith decided she was ready to be a mother. The judge's eyes widened as he read through the pages. He looked up at Meredith, whose perfect composure was starting to crack. He looked at my parents, who were staring at the table in front of them. Then he turned to me. "Do they even know what you have?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, Your Honor. They never asked. They never cared enough to ask." The judge nodded slowly and asked if I had anything else to say. I stood up straight and spoke from my heart. 10 years ago, they called Stella a burden and left her with me. I was 24 years old with no money and no experience and no idea how to raise a child. But I figured it out. I was there for every feeding, every diaper change, every sleepless night. I was there for her first words and her first steps and her first day of school. I have been there for every single day of her life. I paused and looked at my family across the room. They were not there for any of it. Not one phone call, not one birthday card, not one moment of interest in the child they now claim I kept from them. They did not want Stella when she was a newborn who needed everything. They only want her now because she has become useful to them. My voice grew stronger as I continued. Stella is not a burden. She is the greatest blessing of my life. She taught me what family really means. It is not about blood. It is about who shows up. It is about who stays. And I have stayed every single day while they disappeared. The courtroom was silent when I finished. The judge took less than an hour to make his decision. He denied the custody petition completely. He granted me permanent legal custody of Stella. He issued a ruling that Meredith could not have any contact with Stella without my explicit permission. And he addressed my parents directly, telling them they should reflect on what family truly means. Meredith and Richard left without a word. My parents tried to approach me as I was gathering my things. My mother with tears in her eyes, saying she just wanted to see her granddaughter. I looked at her and asked where that desire had been for the past 10 years. Then I walked out of that courtroom and never looked back. That night, I came home to find Stella waiting by the door. Amanda had stayed with her during the hearing, keeping her distracted with movies and games. Stella did not know the details of what had happened, only that Daddy had to go to an important meeting. She ran into my arms the moment I walked through the door. "Is everything okay, Daddy?" she asked. I held her tight, this amazing little girl who had transformed my life in ways I never could have imagined. "Everything is perfect now, sweetheart. Everything is perfect." Amanda joined our hug, wrapping her arms around both of us. We stood there in the hallway for a long time, just holding each other, a family that had been tested and had come out stronger. The weeks that followed were about healing. I had spent so much energy preparing for the custody battle that I had not processed my own emotions about seeing my family again, about hearing my mother lie on the stand, about confronting the reality that the people who raised me had never truly loved me the way parents are supposed to love their children. I started seeing a therapist, something Amanda had been gently suggesting for years. In those sessions, I unpacked decades of feeling invisible and unworthy. I talked about always being second to Meredith, about learning to expect nothing from my parents, about building walls around my heart to protect myself from their indifference. The therapist helped me understand that my parents' behavior said everything about them and nothing about my value as a person. She helped me let go of the anger I had been carrying, not for their sake, but for my own peace of mind. I did not forgive them in the sense of welcoming them back into my life. Some doors need to stay closed. But I stopped letting their rejection define me. I stopped waiting for an apology that would never come. I stopped hoping they would change. I had built my own family now. A real one. Amanda and Stella and Dorothy and the friends who had supported us through everything. That was enough. That was more than enough. Amanda and I got married the following spring. Stella was our flower girl, scattering rose petals down the aisle with the biggest smile on her face. Dorothy sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Our wedding was small, just 50 people in a garden venue outside Portland. But it was filled with more love than any fancy ceremony could have been. These were the people who mattered, the ones who had shown up when things were hard, the ones who had chosen to be part of our lives. During the reception, Stella gave a toast. She stood on a chair so everyone could see her and spoke into the microphone with confidence that made my heart swell with pride. She said that some people thought families had to be related by blood. But she knew better. Family was about who loved you and who took care of you and who was there when you needed them. Then she looked at me and said I was the best daddy in the whole world, and she was glad I was hers. There was not a dry eye in the place. Stella is 12 now. She makes honor roll every semester. She plays piano and paints watercolors and has a group of friends who come over for sleepovers and fill our house with laughter. She knows her story told in age-appropriate pieces over the years. She knows about Meredith and about my parents and about how she came to be my daughter. She has never expressed any desire to meet them. Once, when she was 11, she told me that she did not need a mother who had left her on a doorstep. She already had a dad who had never left her side, and a stepmom who loved her like her own. Family is not about blood. she said, echoing the words from her wedding toast. Family is about who shows up. I could not have said it better myself. Looking back on these 10 years, I sometimes marvel at how everything unfolded. That terrified 24-year-old who found a baby on his doorstep had no idea what he was doing. He made 1,000 mistakes along the way. But he showed up every single day, and that made all the difference. My parents called Stella a burden, and in doing so, they revealed everything about their own hearts. Because Stella was never a burden. She was a gift I did not know I needed a purpose. I did not know I was searching for a love I did not know I was capable of. She saved me as much as I saved her. If you are watching this and you are carrying something heavy, something that other people have dismissed or abandoned, I want you to know that it might be exactly what you need. The hardest challenges often lead to the greatest blessings. The things that scare us most can become the things that define us best. You just have to be brave enough to show up, day after day. Even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. Now I have a question for you. Have you ever had someone call something in your life a burden that turned out to be a blessing? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. And if this video touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss more stories like this one. Share it with someone who might need to hear that showing up matters. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Whatever burdens you are carrying, I hope you find the strength to keep going. Sometimes the heaviest loads lead us to the greatest destinations. Take care of yourselves and each other. I will see you in the next one.